will be in Los Angeles to take on the Clippers. LA is favored by 5.5. That series is tied up at 1. All right, what's going on, my friends? What a great time for sports. We've got the NBA playoffs, which are hot and heavy, and tonight the NFL draft. And I continue to be amazed at how well the NFL has built the draft into something that's now a big time must see event. It was a big deal when I was younger, but nothing like we see now. And ESPN, the way they've worked with it on television, the NFL does a heck of a job. And I'm excited for the draft. This is not the best draft, but there are some good players to be had. And there are some big names where I'm curious to see where they're going to go. Ashton Genty, is he going to go in the first round? Is someone going to be aggressive and trade up to get him? Is it wise to do that for a running back in the first round? And of course, what about Shador Sanders? Is he going to slide? The odds would indicate that's going to happen. Or would the Giants take a risk on him at number 3 because they need a quarterback? Or are they going to go with Abdul Carter? It looks like the first 3 picks in the draft tonight are going to be pretty simple. They'll have Cam Ward going number 1 to Tennessee. I think everyone believes that that's going to happen. The vast majority believe the Browns will take Travis Hunter at number 2. And the way Daniel Jeremiah put it today was Travis Hunter will major in offense and minor in defense. He sees him more as a wide receiver primarily, but a guy that can definitely help on the defensive side of the ball. And how do you utilize Travis Hunter if you take him? Can he go full-time on both sides? And then you've got Abdul Carter, who's probably the best prospect in the draft. Edge rusher, who's got the physical traits you want, can put pressure on the quarterback, plays one of the most important positions in football, and he's just a beast. And I talked with Travis a couple of days ago, and he's been telling me now over the last week that's who he wants the Giants to take. He's a Giant fan. He wants Abdul Carter. But I think after really the top 3 to top 5, that's where things are going to get really interesting. There's even a possibility now that maybe, just maybe, Shador Sanders doesn't go in the first round. It's hard to believe. And if you're a team that needs a quarterback and you're sitting there at 20 or 21 and you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, can you pass on him? Hoping that you might be able to trade back in later in the first round or maybe get him early second. Could he possibly fall that far? The one thing I do believe, there's been a couple of articles that have now come out. Tom Pelissero put one out. We're seeing late reports come out about what some of these teams think about Shador Sanders. The one thing that I believe, and John Middlecoff said this, the teams are not changing their mind about Shador Sanders yesterday or today. The good teams that go through their entire process and talk to everyone they need to talk to come up with a draft grade and a decision on a particular player to where he sits on their board. This is work that was done a long time ago. Teams don't arrive to a day or two before the draft and someone writes an article and it changes their entire view on the player. So whatever Tom Pelissero came up with on Shador or what anyone else is reporting yesterday or today, these teams already know everything about the player. They do big-time investigations, and they dig deep into each player. And, the reason's pretty simple, right? Because they're going to invest millions of dollars potentially into these guys. So they want to know everything about them. Now, I forgot who it was, but I heard someone say this, and I think it's, really smart. But there are things you can do when you're investigating a player or you're scouting a player you can talk to the equipment manager, talk to people behind the scenes who aren't, vital to the program, but they're around the players every day, and you'll be able to get a good sense of what the players are about, especially a quarterback. How does he treat people? How does he communicate with his teammates? How does he deal with staffers? You can get a real good feel by talking to people who are heavily involved on a daily basis, but aren't big names, but they're around to hear and see everything. And I just love that type of digging and that type of data to see exactly what a player is about. And I love this question. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah who said he would ask this question back during his scouting days, where he said that, he would ask players on a team, a college team, if you could have one teammate to take with you moving forward, who would it be? And he said a lot of times you would get the same answer about the same player from multiple guys on the team, that there were always certain names that popped up about players that guys loved to play with, that they loved to be around, guys they respected and wanted to play with moving forward. I think that's a great question. You know, those are the type of things I think that are a lot more important than the measurables, with arm strength, hand size, and all that. I mean, you can either make the throws or you can't. And with Andy Reid, what he did with Patrick Mahomes, when you're trying to figure out what these college players are all about, just the same thing that Sean Payton did with Bo Nix. Take all of the screen passes and all of the throws right there at the line of scrimmage or behind it and just get rid of them and focus on all the throws in that intermediate range to downfield. And when you watch those type of throws and you see the accuracy and the decision-making and what type of windows they're able to fit the ball into, you get a much better idea of what they're going to be able to do on the next level. And that's exactly what Sean Payton did with Bo Nix, because the big story on Bo last year was didn't really have the arm strength. Well, when Sean threw out all of the screen passes, the bubble screens, the short passes, where the quarterback, and we see this a lot in college where they're basically just being a point guard, and pitching the ball down the line of scrimmage and getting it into the hands of a playmaker in space. Those throws don't matter. Everyone can make those throws. So what can he do downfield? So you sort through and you come up with these different highlight packages that focus on those particular throws, the ones that are most important in the NFL. Intermediate range over the middle of the field, fitting it over the top of a linebacker in front of a safety, throws downfield, the accuracy, the anticipation, the timing on those throws, and then you get a good look at the arm strength. Fascinating to me. And with Travis Hunter, Shador Sanders, we'll see where he goes. But you know how these teams work too, right? They may have a late first or early second round grade on a quarterback, but these teams, the reason why you reach on a quarterback, I think, let's take Cam Ward, for example. He's not the best player in the draft. He's not even in the top 10. If you go through and you look at all these different teams' boards, he's going to fit somewhere between 15 and 20. But yet he's going to go number one in the draft tonight. So why is that? Well, it's because quarterback is the most important position in football. And if you don't have a quarterback and you're continuing to search for a quarterback, then you're going nowhere. You've got to have that guy. That's why you keep drafting at the position until you land the right quarterback. The one thing that's interesting to me with Pittsburgh, they could definitely use a quarterback. And Shador Sanders might be their guy. Maybe they take him if he's still available. But I wonder if the recent selection of Kenny Pickett is going to enter their mind. Are they going to have any, PTSD from what happened with Kenny Pickett and how that was a disaster? Would they take a chance on Shador? So we'll see how it shakes out. And what about Jackson Dart? He appears to be climbing. But you always got to keep an eye on the quarterbacks. I guess the best question for this year's draft, how many QBs will go in round one? One, we know for sure, Cam Ward. Will there be another quarterback in the first round selected after Shador Sanders? And if so, who would it be? Is it Shador? I would take Shador for sure. I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback. Is it Jackson Dart? And which teams would be likely to do that? But I'm fascinated by that entire process. So here's how the show is going to work today. So what we're doing, I'm going to take the Rip City Drive up until 5 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, we're going to kick it over to Fox Sports because they're on site for the NFL draft with Jenny Taft, Jay Glazer, Joe Douglas, and LeVar Arrington. And they're going to have in-depth draft coverage with Draft Night Live. And it's going to start at 5 o'clock. So there you have it. That's what we're going to do today. We'll kick it to Fox Sports at 5. And then they'll take over with the NFL draft coverage. Jenny Taft, Jay Glazer, Joe Douglas, and LeVar Arrington. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on social at Chad and Rip City, at Chad and Rip City, or you can also call the show at 503 248 0620. We also have more Portland Thorns tickets to give away today. So all you have to do is listen to me for your chance to win. And then Celeste Trapp is going to join me in studio at 420 for more discussion on what women want. And we're going to focus on communication today, which I think is going to be really good. So we'll get into that at 420. Love the NBA playoff action. We got some more good games last night. In particular, the Houston Rockets bouncing back and winning game 2 over the Warriors. They shot the ball a lot better. Jalen Green had 38 points. Their defense was tenacious, and they played with great energy. And they've got to feel pretty good about themselves going into San Francisco for games 3 and 4. And knowing that they're playing a team that's going to rely on 3 vets in Steph, Dre, and Jimmy Butler, assuming he's going to be good to go for game 3. He took a fall. It's like a hand or something like that. My guess is it's Jimmy Butler. He's going to be good to go for game 3. And these teams in the first round, the weird part is the extra rest that you get between games. I feel like we have to wait like 2 weeks for game 3, Lakers and Timberwolves. That's not going to be until tomorrow night. So we got to wait for that. But I thought the Rockets played extremely well. Much better offensively. They shot the ball better, and they harassed Steph Curry and held him to just 20 points. And in the three-point category, the Warriors hit 17, and the Rockets were able to keep pace with 15. But the way they were able to execute their intensity level, but they're relentless on defense. And I think what you're seeing watch Houston right now, and I think that's kind of what Chauncey Billups is trying to develop in Portland. You know, with that second half surge defensively, with the way they are attacking and being aggressive, like I love to see that type of attack. And so that's where we're at. NFL draft coming up tonight. If you want to share your thoughts, 503-248-0620. If you're on hold, stay there. I will get to your phone calls next. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, telephone number is 503-248-0620. NFL Draft is coming up tonight, and I'm excited for a lot of different things. The local players, where some of those guys are going to end up, including Dylan Gabriel, who I'm a big fan of. And, he had one simple goal, which was to come back and play one more year. He went to Oregon, which I think was a great choice after leaving Oklahoma, and had a great season with the Ducks. And in doing so, I think he's improved his draft stock. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a first-round pick, but I think before his final year at Oregon, he probably would have been towards the end of the draft. But I think he's improved his draft stock. And a lot of these guys who have stayed another year, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, they improve their draft stock, show their value, and are able to get selected, both those guys, in the first round. I like seeing guys, make good decisions, ones that they believe are best for them, and then they go out there with their play and cash in. And so we'll see what happens with Dylan Gabriel tonight. Telephone number is 503-248-0620. Let's go out to the phones. John in Gresham actually wants to talk about Dylan Gabriel. John, I appreciate the call. You're up on the Rip City
Yeah,
Drive.
hey, Chad. Speaking of Dylan Gabriel, I can't believe that I haven't heard anybody on any broadcast even mention his name. And is there some general managers just kind of playing coy and laying in the weeds and going to maybe snag him, late in the first round or early in the second round? Because with his experience with what he did this year, I mean, it's like all I hear about is Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. I mean, it just kind of blows my mind.
Well, I think I can explain it, John, and I appreciate the phone call as always. With Dylan Gabriel, he's not projected to go in the first or second round. I've seen mock drafts that have him going in round 4, and there's one that has him going in round 4 to Miami. But he's not a first or second round quarterback. The issue with Dylan Gabriel, it's really size at 6 feet tall. He's a lefty. I think left-handed quarterbacks, there used to be a stigma on them. I think they've overcome that. I think teams are more comfortable drafting a lefty now. But I think the problem with Dylan Gabriel is just size. Overall arm strength, and then his size being at 6 feet. Now, Dylan Gabriel's mobile, and he can move around, but he's not a big-time scrambler like Lamar Jackson. And we saw the issue with his size being at 6 feet in the Rose Bowl, for example, with the batted balls. And those are issues in the NFL because you're going up against bigger, more talented defensive linemen. They're going to get their hands up, and batted balls could become an issue. And the problem is with Dylan Gabriel, just like it is with Kyler Murray or some of the other undersized quarterbacks in the NFL, you have to adjust your offense to fit the needs of the quarterback so that he's got windows to throw the football through. So I think the height and the size is an issue. And then the overall arm strength. Like, he doesn't have the biggest arm. He's an accurate thrower of the football. What I like about him are his other traits, right? Attitude, work ethic, leadership. Like he's one of those guys that, will become a valuable member of the locker room because of the way he carries himself. And then also I think he's a valuable guy because if you have him on your team as a backup, let's say, if he's in the quarterback room, he's in meeting rooms, the way he handles himself, his understanding of offenses, and his experience level coming out of college, he could be very helpful with his teammates for sure. So I'm pulling for him. I want him to have an opportunity. And maybe Dylan Gabriel is one of those guys where, let's say he gets taken in the 4th round. He gets in with the team, and maybe because of injury, he's able to go out and showcase what he can do and show that in spite of his, lack of size, that he can overcome and make plays. But the most important thing is this, and you know this, John, when it comes to football, or at least at the quarterback position, running an offense the way the coaches want you to execute, throwing the football on time and on target, those are things he can do. Now, can he make all the throws in the NFL? I'm not sure, but I know he can deliver it on time and on target. But his size and the batted balls and the way you have to adjust your offense for a quarterback at his size is a little bit different. But if you get a team that's willing to take on a player like that, then that's okay. And that's why I think Miami would make sense because they're used to dealing with an undersized quarterback in Tua, a left-handed undersized quarterback in Tua, but they make it work, and he's been very productive. So maybe that's what Dylan Gabriel needs is just that right team, the right coach, and the right system where you can put him in a position to have success. Let's go back out to the phones. Raider Mike is chiming in. Raider Mike, what's up, brother? NFL draft night, buddy.
Long time no speak.
I know.
You there, Chad?
I am.
Chad,
Raider Mike,
you there?
talk to me. Raider Mike, fire back. John heard me, and I was able to communicate with him. But knowing you, Raider Mike, you're probably calling from the backwoods of the Carolinas or something like that. So call back. So the other player I'm going to keep an eye on, obviously, Shedeur Sanders, I think, is the big story because, we don't know exactly how far he's going to fall. Some people think he may not get taken in the first round. We saw a report today where there are a number of teams that have a second-round grade on him. So is it possible that he's not selected in the first round? But the other player I'm going to keep an eye on is Ashton Genty. He's got unique ability, and I think he's got a chance to be a bell cow type running back in the NFL. And I know the Broncos have interest. There are teams rumored that might look to move up and get him. I'm just not sure I would spend draft capital to move up if you're in the 20s to make sure you've got a chance to grab Ashton Genty because this is a deep running back class. I'm not going to give up draft capital so I can move up to get Ashton Genty, but I do think he's a special player. And I think Ashton Genty should probably lob a phone call to a few running backs in the NFL like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley and thank them for their work and their dominance, which has shown this renaissance in the game of football, which is nice. Let's go back out to the phones. Raider Mike. Raider Mike, you're back. Can you hear me, my friend?
Data boy, I got 4 bars. Let's roll.
Yeah, buddy.
This is Christmas Day.
It is.
I love this day. Almost more than the Super Bowl. No, I do. I like it more than the Super Bowl because we haven't smelled it for 23 years. So, anyway, I'm giving you a Raider update. What I think's going to happen, and I've got my ear to the ground on this. If Shedeur is there, we're going to take him. And the only reason I say that is because of the Brady connection. It's too strong. It's too loud. So unless the Giants take him, which is quite possible, because everyone's been lying a lot, but I can't see them passing on Carter. So if they don't do it, we're going to take Shedeur. Now, if he's gone, it's Genty. We keep hearing all this talk of linemen getting drafted. No. Colton Miller is now being used as kind of like a prop to let people think we might be leaning that way just to get the scent off of Mr. Genty. Because he is we were 32nd in the league last year rushing. Well done letting Josh Jacobs walk, Raiders. Good idea, you idiots. Terrell is finally there. And I love Spy Tech out of Tampa. He built a champion with Brady. They're buddies. They're both Michigan boys. So we'll see what happens. I think that's what's going to go down. If they're both gone, we're going to trade back. And let the cards play as they may, because the strength of this draft is 20 through 70. So go get that other second-round pick and let the cards fall as they may. What do you think, Chad?
All right. I appreciate that, my friend. Here's what I think about the Raiders. I don't think they're going to take Shedeur Sanders. If you look at Pete Carroll, think about his situation right now. He's got a chance to coach again. He loves coaching, but he's probably not going to coach for a long period of time. How long is he going to be there with the Raiders? 3 years? Is it going to be more than 3 years? I mean, his age is just hard to say. I would say that he probably won't be there for 5 years, meaning I think Pete Carroll's looking to win right now. So you go out there, you get your quarterback, and they gave Geno some money. So I don't think their plan is to draft quarterback. I do think that Ashton Genty will get some consideration from the Raiders, but I think more than likely, based on what I know of Pete Carroll, they're going to look to beef up the line of scrimmage. And Pete Carroll's going to try and win now. And that's why they signed Geno. And they'll do it. They're going to try and win. I think what's going to be great with Pete Carroll and the Raiders this year is you're going to see them right back to respectability. At least the ship is being, steered in the right direction. They're not going to be a rudderless ship because Pete Carroll knows how to lay a foundation. He knows how to coach. He knows how to prepare his players. He knows how to bring optimism and energy into a franchise. Yeah, Pete Carroll is a very good coach, and he's very good at taking over a reclamation project and getting it on track. But my guess would be he's going to try and build it up strong through the middle, so they might look at line of scrimmage help. Ashton Genty's a possibility, but I do not think they're going to take Shedeur Sanders because they got Geno, and they gave Geno the money. So I think Pete Carroll's trying to win right now. And, a lot of the mocks, they all agree at the top. Cam Ward, number 1. Travis Hunter, number 2 to the Browns. Abdul Carter going 3rd to the New York Giants. Will Campbell, the offensive lineman from LSU, going to the Patriots. And a lot of people see Ashton Genty going 5th to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And then we'll see how things shake out from there. But you could have just one quarterback going in the first round tonight. Interesting. Mason Graham possibly to the Dolphins. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm anxious to see what the Broncos are going to do. Are they going to look to get more weapons for Bo Nix? Will they go running back first round? Or because it's a deep running back class, will they wait until the second round? If you need a running back, this is the year to get one. And not just Ashton Genty, but there are many others who are available that can get the job done. So I'm pretty excited. But it's looking more and more likely that Shedeur is going to fall down the list. Now, John brought up another good point, too. He's like, are there just smoke screens going out there? He was talking about Dylan Gabriel. I do know this, that if there are teams that really like certain players that they know are going to be available in like the 3rd or 4th round, the middle rounds of the NFL draft, they don't say anything about them. And we've learned this, too, that teams oftentimes, for some of these fringe guys, they won't even ask for them to be invited to the combine because they don't want anybody else around the league to get a look at the players because they have plans to bring him in as an undrafted free agent. So if you have interest in a guy that's going to be available in the 3rd or 4th round, you're going to keep your mouth shut because you don't want anyone to consider the player. You don't want to bring attention to the player. You just want him to continue to, fly under the radar until it's your time to pick at the right time, and then you bring in the player. So, yes, smoke screens. There are so many things, for what I've been told, the night before, like the day before, the 24 to 48 hours leading up to the draft, there are all sorts of stories. And you got to sift through the nonsense. And there's a bunch of garbage out there because teams are trying to, well, they're lying because it's a game of cat and mouse. And I love it, too, because you got this 2 or 3 days leading up to the draft. So you've got the GMs, the assistant GMs, the entire staff that are working on potential trades, what a potential trade might look like, who wants to trade up, who's looking to trade back. You're hearing from other teams. You want to know what the price is for certain things, and then they prepare for that moment. So when they're on the clock, they can execute the decision. I just love the whole process of everything. And the teams that are best at it, they always succeed. And the teams that fail at it are always picking up there near the top of the draft, like the Browns, like the Jets. But the teams that are great at it, Philadelphia, the 2 teams that are just buttoned up and well-run that come to mind, Baltimore and Philadelphia. And Baltimore has been one of the best-run organizations in the NFL for quite some time. And Philadelphia is right there because Howie Roseman's a genius, and they know exactly what they're doing. And I think what happens is that the advantage for these teams that have continuity in front office and on the sideline, they have a system, they know how they play, they have an identity, and they go out there and find the players to plug in. One thing that Baltimore's done, and every team kind of goes through a process to where they settle in and find what works for them. What Baltimore's been doing is like, hey, we're just going to draft players from these Power 4 conferences that are highly productive, and it's turned out to work for them. We're going to take guys from the SEC. We're going to take guys from the Big Ten, these ultra-productive players, and we're going to load them in and continue to do what we do. And some teams will take chances on fringe guys, but, a team like Baltimore, a team like Philly, they find the guys who have been playing big boy football in college, and they just go with it. Take the best player available, go after the big guys who have been playing up against the best competition, and there you have it. And we've talked about that earlier this week. That's why the Senior Bowl is so valuable, right? Because you get a chance to see some of these guys from different colleges going up against number ones. Because in college, the competition you face week in and week out, Depending on what conference you play in and being out of conference, sometimes you just don't match up against elite talent. But you get to the Senior Bowl, and all of a sudden the guy lining up on the other side of the ball from you is a number one. And that's why that whole process is important when it comes to the draft. But trust me, these teams know everything about all the players they're considering. They've got their board set up. And when it comes to a guy like Shador, they weren't surprised at anything that's been reported over the last couple of days because they've all done their research. They've all done the deep dive. They've talked to their people. They've done their research. And the teams that are really good at it have done a heck of a job with their research. And so a team's not going to change their mind, 1 day or 2 days before the draft on a particular player because of a report, because they already know everything. And if they don't know everything about the player, then they're not doing it the right way. But I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch Pete Carroll. Obviously, I despise the Raiders because I'm a Bronco fan, but I respect Pete Carroll. I'm assuming having Tom Brady in the building probably is not a bad idea because he knows football, he's well connected, and he's got a good eye for things with his career. And you've got Mark Davis in a position to where he's listening and allowing these guys around him to help him make decisions, which is a good thing. And when you get ultra competitive, smart guys, football guys like Pete Carroll and Tom Brady, working within a franchise, you're going to do good things. But I would be stunned if the Raiders took Shador Sanders. Not in a situation where they got Geno, and Pete Carroll's not trying to develop a guy for the next coaching staff. He's trying to win right now. He knows he's got time. 2 or 3 years before he shuts it down? Maybe 4, maybe. Obviously at that age, you don't know how your health is going to hold up over the next 2 or 3 years. He doesn't have a lot of time, so he wants to go out there and make it happen now. So I'm pretty excited about that. But with the quarterbacks, I like Shador and I like Cam. But I think if you're taking Cam Ward at number 1, that's a risky proposition because he's not the perfect prospect. Neither is Shador. They both have potential, depending on where they land and the system they're in, to be highly productive in the NFL. But it's not a no-brainer. It's not like Peyton Manning or some of these guys where it's like you just take them and it's going to change your franchise instantly. But here's why. Here's why teams will reach on quarterbacks. Look at what happened last year. Denver was going nowhere. They draft Bo Nix. He turns out to hit, and all of a sudden they're in the postseason. The Washington Commanders, with a new coaching staff, new ownership group, they draft Jaden Daniels, and all of a sudden they're knocking on the door trying to get to the Super Bowl because of one player, because he was so dynamic, right? The Chicago Bears didn't get postseason action, but they got Caleb Williams. They've retooled the roster, and now they believe they're in a position to compete. It's all about getting that guy. And once you got him, then you can start to build the rest of the team. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. You can find me on social at Chad and Rip City. And we got Portland Thorns tickets that I will give away today. Well, Shacker, that must be the highly edited version. Nice work, my friend. All right, telephone number 503 248 0620. 503 248 0620. Or you can find me on social at Chad and Rip City. NBA playoffs. I've got TNT on here in the studio. Shaq, Kenny, Charles. They're getting ready for the Pistons and Knicks game 3 in Detroit. That's going to be a great scene. The Detroit Piston fans haven't seen playoff action in quite some time, so it should be a tremendous atmosphere. And this is another story. Like the Pistons, they might win the first round matchup. They may not, but they're one of the best stories in the NBA this year. And I like watching them play. And Cade Cunningham is a bad boy. He is a naughty basketball player. He had a big-time game in game number 2. I think what impressed me the most so far in this series with the Pistons is how they got blitzed at the end of that game 1. They were in control the entire way through. And then in the last half of the fourth quarter, they gave up a 21-zip run. And they lose. And I was like, man, that could be devastating for a young basketball team, deflating. But it wasn't. If you listen to their comments after the game, they were happy with the way they played. They were having fun. And they came out with that same type of positive energy in game 2, and they controlled that game. And then before you know it, boom, they even up the series, and they're back in Detroit with a chance to make some noise. Very impressive. But it was Cunningham who kind of led the way. But there were other guys who stepped up. Jalen Duren, without Isaiah Stewart in the lineup in game 2, was able to rise up and have an effective game. They've got, Tobias Harris. They've got some dudes. And so I'm impressed. These young teams with little playoff experience, like the Rockets, like the Pistons, like the Thunder, they're out there making some noise right now. It's fun to watch. Now, the games tonight, the problem is I'm so down with the Rockets, and I love the Houston Golden State series and the Lakers Timberwolves series, that it's just hard for me to get up. But I'll tell you what, tonight we got 2 good ones. But this one I understand that they're putting the Nugget Clipper game on NBA TV. That's a bad decision, all right? First playoff game at Intuit Dome. Nuggets and Clippers, which has been one of the best series thus far. The 2 games in Denver were off the chain. But they're putting it on NBA TV, and the Thunder, the 1 seed, and the Grizzlies, game 3 in Memphis is going to be on TNT. What do we got there? Another blowout? They're going to crush them. Knicks, Pistons, no-brainer. That's going to be a heck of a game coming up at 4 o'clock. But the Thunder are just destroying the Grizzlies right now. I would expect that to be a sweep. And the Thunder are playing the exact same way they did in the regular season. Dominant on both ends. They've got star power, and they're incredibly deep. And that's what's going to be hard for any of these other teams in the Western Conference. When you match up against the Thunder, they've got a variety of different athletes. They can play you different ways. They can switch all 5 positions. They're great defensively, and they're great on offense. And they've got an MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or the soon-to-be NBA MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So that's tough. That's tough. I guess with the draft, I don't know what your team – I guess it depends on what your team needs, right? So if your team needs a quarterback, you're desperate for a quarterback. That's what you're paying attention to. And that's the way it was last year with the Broncos. There was all that talk about Bo Nix. They were sitting there in the first round. Would they get a chance to draft one? And they got him. But now that the Broncos have a quarterback, there's no pressure to get that guy. So they really, because they've been able to take care of other positions and they're pretty well set, I can sit back and relax tonight knowing that no matter what position they go with in the first round, they're going to add and just continue to tinker and fine-tune things, right? But some of these other teams have massive needs, like the Cleveland Browns. They do need a quarterback. They need a lot of stuff. But can you pass on Travis Hunter? And if you're sitting at number 1 in your Tennessee, you probably don't want to go with another season of Will Levis because he's a disaster. But is it worth it to take Ward and pass on a generational talent like Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter? I guess it depends on how you feel about the quarterback. If you believe that Cam Ward can be your franchise, then take Cam Ward. If you believe that. If you're uncertain, then take the best available player at that position or the position that you're drafting in. That's really what it comes down to. If you think the quarterback is your guy, then it doesn't matter where he's at on your board. If you have Cam Ward number 14, but you take him at number 1, it doesn't matter because if he hits at quarterback, then you're set. That's all that matters. Finding the guy that hits. So we'll see how things shake out. But that's really what it comes down to, right? Quarterbacks get taken because everyone needs a quarterback. So teams will reach on a quarterback in the first round. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But other than that, the draft doesn't have a lot of the biggest intrigue is Shador and how far he might fall and what teams might be willing to trade back into the first round. But it's not littered with big-time star power. And the problem is when you have a lot of, quality depth at like defensive tackle or edge rusher, some of those names aren't as prevalent as other positions like receiver or quarterback or these ones that fans are well aware of. So we'll see how it shakes out. But that's the way it's going to look. Your first few picks, obviously at number 1, it's Tennessee. Then Cleveland at 2, Giants at 3, Patriots sitting there at 4, Jacksonville at 5, Raiders 6, Jets are at number 7, followed by the Panthers, Saints, and Bears. And that's it. That's your top 10. Now, there could be trades tonight, but it's hard to project trades. But maybe a team will pass on Sanders early and maybe look to trade back into the first round if they truly want that quarterback. Or is Shador going to be one of those day 2 guys? We'll see how things shake out. For the Broncos, if they took running back in the first round, that's fine. If they want to go receiver and add another weapon for Bo Nix, that would be fine. Now, anything to help Bo Nix out. So if that's Ashton Genty or if that's another running back that you see, if it's a tight end or a wide receiver to pair up with Cortland Sutton, I'm on board with all of that. Whatever it takes to put your young quarterback in a position to have success, right? And the Broncos are in that great window now where Bo Nix is on a rookie scale quarterback contract. So they don't have to worry about paying big money to him yet. So you can go out there and beef up other positions. But the one player I care most about is Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State. I don't know if he's going to go to Denver, but that's what I'm hoping for. But he's a guy I'll follow. But teams are lying. A lot of smoke screens, a lot of nonsense going on. All right, we'll keep things rolling. When we come back, I've got a pair of tickets for the Thorns that I'm going to give away, and we'll do that next coming up on the Rip City Drive. I appreciate your time. At 5 o'clock, we're going to kick it to Fox. They're live on site for the draft for complete coverage. What's up, my friends? Now, 4 o'clock chat here. We start with the NFL. The NFL draft is coming up here in just over an hour. The top 3 picks, Tennessee, Cleveland, followed by the New York Giants. Cam Ward expected to go number 1 to Tennessee. The Browns are expected to take Heisman Trophy winner Travis Hunter out of Colorado. And the Giants, edge rusher Abdul Carter from Penn State. In the NBA, we have 3 playoff games tonight. Tip-off of the first game coming up in just a couple of minutes on TNT. The Knicks and Pistons, Game 3 in Detroit. That series is tied up at 1. At 6:30 on TNT, the Thunder will be in Memphis to meet the Grizzlies. OKC, a 9.5-point favorite. They have dominated the first 2 games of the series. And the nightcapper, 7 o'clock tip from Intuit Dome in L.A., Nuggets and Clippers. That series tied up at 1. L.A. tonight, a 5.5-point favorite. Boy, I hate stories like this. USC recruit Elijah Arenas is in a coma after a car crash. And, of course, Elijah is the son of Gilbert Arenas. And Gilbert Arenas is one of those guys. I've listened to a lot of him lately on various podcasts. I really like the way he shares his thoughts on the game and life and his openness. So as a father, just seeing this story makes my stomach turn. Hate that kind of stuff. And I just went through that course that I had to take to get my ticket dropped that I got a couple of weeks ago. And that was shortly after getting that new insurance deal where I'm saving a bunch of money. So the officer was very nice to give me this option where I could take the class and then get the ticket dropped. So I had to go through and, look at all these different videos and stuff, and they were horrific. I don't know if they do that to scare you or whatever, but I'll tell you what, after I saw that, I was like, whew, horrible. Yeah, 5-star men's basketball recruit for USC, Elijah Arenas, has been placed in an induced coma after he was involved in a serious car crash in L.A. early Thursday morning. According to the L.A. Fire Department and a public information officer, officials responded to a call at 4:55 a.m. after a Tesla Cybertruck crashed into a tree/fire hydrant with fire involved. The L.A. Fire Department did not identify the person involved, but said the 18-year-old driver was out of the vehicle and that he had been transported to the hospital in serious condition. The L.A. Police Department later said that Arenas was in stable condition. Sources told ESPN that initial tests showed he did not suffer any broken bones. But I tell you what, when you hear a story like this, basketball takes it kind of fades off in the distance, doesn't it? Just the fact that he's in stable condition. He is the number 13 ranked recruit in the class of 2025 after reclassifying in December and then committing to the Trojans in January. Yikes. That's scary. Our thoughts and prayers are with Elijah and his family following this morning's accident. Trojans coach Eric Musselman said in a statement, please keep him, his teammates, and his friends, and the entire Arenas family in your prayers. I like E-Mus. Eric Musselman's a good dude. Oh, that's scary. Horrible. All right. The overwhelming favorite to go number 1 in the draft, of course, tonight is Cam Ward. That's not a surprise. He entered Thursday as a minus 20,000 favorite to be the top pick by the Titans. Colorado's Travis Hunter is the favorite, minus 5,000 to go second, followed by Penn State's Abdul Carter, minus 700 at number 3. LSU's Will Campbell minus 700 at number 4, and Boise State's Ashton Genty minus 230 at number 5. So basically what this is telling you is that the top 5 picks are pretty well set. That's what we know. Ward opened as a 7-1 underdog to the number 1 pick when odds were first posted in November behind Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders and Hunter. Ward leapfrogged Colorado's 2 stars during the college football season, becoming the favorite to be the top pick in early January. His odds jumped to minus 1,000 in late March and then to minus 20,000 and shorter last week. Well, the reason why his odds went off the charts to be number 1 last week was because he was picked up. What was he playing? Fortnite? He was streaming and playing Fortnite, and he was talking about who he thought the best players at different positions in the NFL were, and he was naming all Titans. And that's how we found out he was going to be the number 1 pick. Why would Cam Ward be talking about various Titans players at different positions being the best guys at their position in the league for no reason? Well, the reason is pretty simple. He knows he's going to be selected by the Titans, so he's already being a good quarterback and taking care of his teammates. Remember we talked about that yesterday. If you're going to be a quarterback of an NFL team, there are just certain things that come with that job. You've got to handle yourself in a different way. You got to handle your business differently. You got to be the first to show up and the last to leave. You got to take care of your offensive linemen. You got to make sure you say something without saying anything. You've got to be selfless. And when you're critical of your teammates, make sure it's behind closed doors. You don't lob grenades at your teammates in public behind the podium when you're talking to the press. You always blame yourself. I should do more. I need to be better. I wasn't at my best. Even when you know the receiver ran the wrong route and you threw a pick because you put the ball right in the spot, but your receiver's a dum-dum and didn't run the right route. You can't say that. You can tell them that behind closed doors, like, bro, what are you doing? This is the play. This is how you need to run the route. This is where I want you to be. But you don't do that in public. That's not the way quarterbacks do it, right? And you're also the face of a Fortune 500 company. You got to be how you dress, how you roll, the whole shebang. It's just different. But that's okay. That's part of being a quarterback. You're going to get all the attention. You're going to take more blame than is necessary when you lose. You're going to take more credit than you deserve when you win. And you're going to make a heck of a lot of money. And you're always going to be on TV, and everyone's going to want to talk to you. It comes with that position. So Cam Ward is going to go number 1. Travis Hunter is going to go number 2. And Abdel Carter is going to go number 3. Will Campbell is going to go high, as is Ashton Genty. And I think Genty's a special player. And what I'm hoping is, with these running backs now, after what we saw last year, particularly with Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry, maybe these teams will start to lean on their running backs a little bit more. The reason why, and it's not just Genty, but there are a lot of good running backs in this class. I'm anxious to see over the next year or two how much of a resurgence we see in the running back department. If teams will get away from this trio of backs or back by committee and start leaning on a bell cow. And it makes sense, right? Because what's happened in the NFL is that, we saw this shift and change to a pass-happy offense. Teams getting a lot of receivers on the field. They spread the field. They put their quarterback in shotgun, and they start whipping it around the yard. Well, defenses, in order to adjust, got a lot lighter and a lot faster, particularly at safety and at linebacker. So you got smaller guys on the field, but they can run sideline to sideline, and they can cover. You got to have linebackers who can cover downfield, receivers and tight ends. Well, when you have a small defense, what are they going to struggle with? The running game, physical football, teams that are aggressive at the line of scrimmage and want to ram the football down your throat. So I think we're seeing this, the course correct a little bit with teams getting back to the running game. And that's what I love about football is that with all the innovation and all the changes we've seen in the offense, there's still a tried and true formula for success. If you run the football with a high level of success and you can stop the run, you're going to have a chance to win the majority of football games you play. When you win the battle at the line of scrimmage, you run the ball and stop the run, you've got a chance to win. And with these teams going lighter and smaller on defense to deal with all the pass, why not go against the grain and decide, hey, we're going to line up and get physical? Look at Baltimore with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Look at Philadelphia with their offensive line and their strong quarterback in Jalen Hurts and their running back in Saquon Barkley. Ashton Genty can be that type of player. I'm not going to sit here and say he's Barry Sanders, but he put up Barry Sanders type numbers at Boise this year. But he can do it all. I love backs that can be on the field all three downs, meaning you can run him on first and second down, between the tackles, outside the tackles, and he's got the speed to burst anywhere on the field and get it to the house. But more importantly, on third down, when you're in shotgun, Ashton Genty can catch the football. You can run him on a draw. But most importantly, he's stout and strong and has an understanding of offense where he can be there for blitz pickup. And that can be a valuable tool, a security type blanket for your quarterback when you got a guy who can, pass protect. It's a critical thing to have in the NFL. And Ashton Genty can do just about anything. And that's what's great. Love that. Really love that. So big props. So I want to see where Ashton Genty goes. If the Broncos wound up with Genty, I'd be pretty happy about that. Because you got Bo Nix going into year two. He's a young quarterback. And if you can get somebody in the backfield that can catch the football, blitz pick up, be able to run the football, take pressure off the QB, I'm all about that. Give me that guy all day. But there are more guys in the draft than just Ashton Genty. But that we'll see if teams are willing to adjust and adapt. Same thing in the NBA, right? Where most of these teams are going small or smaller. They're spreading the floor. And they're putting guys on the floor that can shoot threes all day long, which is great, especially if you got guys who can knock it down at a high level. And there are teams like Boston that can shoot the three at a high rate, and they put up a ton of threes throughout the course of the game. But if a team's going to go small, you don't have to match them all the time and go small yourself. Go big. Like, look at Cleveland. Best record in the Eastern Conference. They do it differently. They play two bigs, Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, and it works. And they've had great success. I like teams showing a willingness to mix it up and go against the grain. I think that's a good way to roll. So we'll see how things shake out. All right, telephone number 503-248-0620. You can reach out to me on social at Chad and Rip City. When we come back, Celeste Trapp going to join me in studio for more discussion of what women want. We're going to talk about communication today. This is one where I'm going to take notes. I could probably use help in this department. 503-248-0620. Right now, the Knicks on top of the Pistons, 3-1 with 9:47 to go in the first. That has the look and feel of an Eastern Conference playoff game right there. All right, always a pleasure to welcome Celeste Trapp from Harem back in studio for What Women Want as we continue our discussions on relationships and a variety of different things. You know, it's funny, you had mentioned to me earlier today that you would use ChatGPT to help a friend out. I have been turned on to, in fact, Antonio Harvey, former Trailblazer, turned me on to ChatGPT last year. And so I've been using it more and more for a variety of different things, usually to help with ideas. I can't believe what it's able to come up with. It's mind blowing.
It is amazing. I've been listening to some podcasts recently on it, and it's just there's so many things you can use it for.
Yeah.
But I never thought, I was starting to tell you, my friend used it as basically a therapist. He was deciding if he wanted to stay with this girl he'd been with for a couple years, and he showowed me the chat. It was like a $300 therapist visit.
That's
It
incredible.
was so impressive. Like the feedback it gave back. He should let me see the prompts he gave it, which is basically him just kind of giving this scenario of what was going on with this woman. And, you know, she was basically wanting more than he was able to give or wanting to give at that time in his life.
Yeah.
And the chat, what it gave back, you know, it eventually led him to decide that it was time to set her free. But it was just super impressive. Therapists are probably getting a little nervous because.
How did the ChatGPT information that came back to him, how did it match up with people that he knew and respected that were giving him advice, or he was asking for
it was
advice?
solid advice.
It was.
Like, I don't think I could give him any better advice. I'm pretty certain I couldn't. And he listened to it, you know, and now you can have an avatar, I think, like recite this information to you. So you're not just reading it. Like, it can actually be like a lifelike person giving you this information back.
Yeah, what I use it for, like if there's a certain topic or athlete or something specific I'm going to discuss on the show, what I do is I'll use ChatGPT, because when you do the hardest part about doing a show by yourself is that I'm just one mind. And so I see certain things in a certain way, and there are certain topics that maybe I'm missing a couple of layers to. So ChatGPT is nice to ask them about certain things, and they might come up with a couple of ideas, or it might spit back something that I hadn't considered, and then I can take it in that direction as well. So it's helpful when it comes to preparation for doing a radio show. I know some people could use it for meetings to help them with different ideas they hadn't considered. It's just another little tool that we have access to. I would have never thought to use it like, should I still be in this relationship? But, I mean, heck, you know as well as I do that sometimes I'll go to friends or people I respect, and you ask them about something, and you know that the advice they're giving you may not be the best.
Right. They might be holding back a little bit, maybe to save your feelings, or maybe they're kind of jaded too. They're like, I'd really like Chad back in the golf game every Sunday, and this girl's kind of in the way.
Yeah, exactly.
But he definitely got his Chat GPT subscription worth with that feedback.
Yeah.
He did not tell her that was how he got to his decision, which is
that's
probably
a good
call.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to tell someone that I arrived to this conclusion. Well, ChatGPT said, you don't want to do that.
No.
It really doesn't matter.
No.
But if you can use information or technology to help you in a difficult situation, or if you're trying to make a choice, and that becomes another source of information to help you arrive to a conclusion, there's nothing wrong with that.
Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't heard of people using it for their social profiles, but probably wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. In fact,
Although the AI photos, I definitely would say don't use AI photos for your profiles. That's cheating.
it's cheating. I don't like AI photos. I don't like anything that's doctored. I just don't think that's I don't think that's fair to anyone, right? If you're going to present yourself, and then when the person shows up, when you meet in person, and it's not representative of who you are, then I feel like that's there's something that's unsavory about that.
Yeah, definitely for online dating. But media in general is all doctored.
Yeah.
It has been for years. So, in that case, I think might as well join them, because if you're competing with people in like media, that's what's happening in movies and film. But yeah, for online dating, it's not the right thing to do. And somebody's going to meet you face to face and be like, "Look, this looks nothing like you," and then exit quickly. Probably.
I think in a professional setting, like for instance, let's say I tape an interview with someone, and I mispronounce a word, or if someone says something where it didn't come out right, well, that's the beauty of being able to go in and edit it and doctor it to where you're getting exactly what you want. I don't think you're misrepresenting anything. You're just taking out mistakes to make it sound clean, and you're giving a proper presentation. That's different than putting up an AI photo that's not an exact representation of what you're presenting yourself as. It's different in a dating, landscape.
Yeah, totally.
Well, communication's important, and along these lines, with this gentleman who used ChatGPT to help him decide whether or not he wanted to continue or should he continue in a relationship he had been with in a couple of years. Communication's important. Getting into a relationship, we talked a lot about how you communicate and the questions you should ask initially when you start dating, but also communication at the end. Like if you are going to break up with someone, right? You got to be able to communicate that and do so in a way that's respectful to the individual.
Right. Well, I did give him a little bit of flack for the fact he did text her. But he told me it was following up from conversations they already had about maybe, the state of the relationship was on the way out. But to me, you don't, especially somebody, a relationship, you don't end on a text. But even just dating in general, like, one, a text is better than nothing.
Yes.
The ghosting that's going on and how that's become a societal norm is just so disappointing to me that people are okay with that. Have you ever been ghosted?
I have been, yeah.
It doesn't feel good. It's like, how do you want to share?
Yeah, well, I had communicated, on the phone and via text that we were going to meet at a specific location at a certain time. And it was very clear. There was no confusion about time, place, day, everything, right? So I show up to this place over there in Southeast Portland, and I got there probably about 5 to 10 minutes early, and I waited. And then about 5 to 10 minutes past the hour at the time that we were supposed to meet, then I started to wonder. So I sent a text, no response. And I waited about another 5 minutes and sent another text and no response. So I just left, and I never got any type of clarification or anything.
It's so rude.
And so,
and was it somebody you had been going back and forth with?
Yeah.
Like,
so someone,
but it was your first date, in-person date.
First meet in person.
Yeah.
But this is someone I've been communicating with for quite some time, and then all of a sudden, just nothing, a ghost. And my thought is like, and you're probably the same way I am. It's like, if someone arrives to the conclusion that I thought I wanted to meet you, but then I decided not to, just text me and tell me.
Right.
I'm not going to be upset or offended or any of that.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's your right. If you don't, if something else came up or if something else is going on or you just decide you didn't want to meet, no problem. Just a simple message to communicate that.
Yeah, I can't wrap my mind around why people think it's better to ghost. Like, are they protecting the other person because they don't want to tell them something they don't want to hear? Or do they just need to grow some? I mean, because at the end of the day, I don't think anybody would take being ghosted over somebody telling them, hey, I'm not interested.
Well, what I wonder is, too, and I it very well could be the case, but I wonder now where we're in society where we spend so much time with email and text message without the face-to-face communication. If you're not communicating with someone face-to-face and you don't have the eye contact and that human interaction, I wonder if it's just easier to just not respond or send a text, right? Does electronic communication over a long period of time, does it erode the way that we're supposed to communicate as people? Because I truly believe that as humans, we need human interaction, not via text or email or through, I mean, you can do like a FaceTime call, but I'm talking about face-to-face human interaction. Like you and I, face-to-face, we have eye contact right now, we're talking. Like, I think that's important for everyone, regardless of age. There's a part of living is having some human interaction. I think it's important for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wrap my mind around why this ghosting has become a thing. I mean, it seems like it just started, doesn't it? Like, the first time I heard the words were maybe like 5 years ago.
Do you think this happens more with younger individuals and people who are older?
I think it started there. Yeah. And then I think it just slowly has just started to spread. I even had it with people who are prospective employees, where they get to a certain point in the screening or whatever, and you're coordinating, and then they just go silent. And it's like, all you have to do is say, oh, thanks for the time. I've taken another job. It's not a good fit. I mean, it's the same mentality of just kind of being like, okay, well, I'm done with that person or that conversation. So I'm just going to,
And then they burn that bridge, right?
Yeah.
So if someone ghosts you and then they come back to you later because they really want the job at that time, you're not going to give them the time of day because they ghosted you.
Right. So unprofessional.
But if they were to say, hey, at this time, I appreciate all the time and I've enjoyed the interview process and getting a chance to know you and the people who work for you, but this is not going to work for me at this time, you would totally respect that.
Right. Yeah. Good luck to you.
Yes.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah. I just wish, I think that there might be a time where people wake up and they're like, treat people how you want to be treated. I don't want to be ghosted, so I'm not going to do that to somebody else because I really think it shows, poor integrity to do it. But maybe people haven't really thought of it that way. They just think everyone's doing it. So this is how I'm communicating. Because you say a lot by not saying anything.
Yeah.
Right. And the other person's left to kind of make a determination of why. Is it because, they don't like me, they're not interested, they're dating somebody else? All the reasons why our brain can be flooded with, right? And not really knowing is hard for people.
Well, I just had that conversation with my daughter a couple of weeks ago. I dropped her and her friend off at the mall, and I said, "Okay, you choose the time. I'll pick you guys up when you're ready." So they picked the time and agreed to meet me back on the same curb where I dropped them off at a specific time. I think it was like 6:30. Well, when I got there, they weren't there. And so I called, no response. And then about 25 minutes after the time we had agreed to meet so I could pick them up, they walked out. And so I explained to my daughter, I was like, look, I let you choose the time and you chose that time. If you wanted to stay longer, then all you have to do is text me or call me and say, hey, can you pick us up at 7?
Right. With enough window of time so you're not leaving the house and then waiting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was just explaining that it's just a matter of respect. I said I had other things I was doing that I cut short because I needed to pick you up. If you would have let me know, I would have said no problem, and it would have given me time to finish my tasks. But I came up here and wasted 25 minutes of my time, and you weren't here. It's the same thing. It's just a matter of communication and respect. And
it's the respect, I think, is the key word there.
Yeah. Well, if someone ghosts you right there, that tells you that they don't respect you.
Yeah, it's kind of like good riddance. I mean, if that's the person, the character you have, then I'm probably better to know that now than later.
Yes. What I've learned, too, is that facing, well, I mean, you know this in life. You deal with the same thing. Conversations that are challenging or ones that could create some conflict, and obviously breaking up with someone is definitely in that boat, right? But what I found is that by making myself do that and do the right thing and have that face-to-face conversation out of respect for the person, the more that I do that, not that it becomes easier, but at least I'm equipped to be able to deal with those type of matters. And you're going to face them at some point, so you don't run from it. There are necessary fears that we have to embrace to overcome those type of obstacles.
And when you end a relationship or a connection, if we call it, somebody that just is meeting, briefly online, when you end it properly with respect, it's so much easier than to run into that person, which it's a small city we live in. So, to run into that person and feel okay about it and not feeling like, oh, I need to go the other direction because the way I ended that was so wrong.
Yeah.
But talking about how to end it. So this friend of mine, he did end it on a text, and I don't know if they ended up meeting in person afterwards, but at least, there was communication, at all. It wasn't ghosting, of course, but
you wouldn't recommend a text to end a relationship, right?
But I think I've had experiences where, I'm going to need to tell this person I don't want to see them anymore. But then you get together and it's like, when's a good time? Like having that hard conversation is hard to do. And all of a sudden you kind of put it off and the night's over and you're like, okay, next time. And so I've done it where I've sent a nice text and just said, I think, I'm still looking for my person, or however I phrase it. You could use that same one over and over. I don't do that. But, if you have something that works for you, like just saying something. But in that case, if you spend some time with somebody, even if it's just a couple weeks or a couple months or however, I like to think that give them the opportunity. Hey, if you want to meet for a coffee or a walk or something, happy to do that and be friends, or, talk more about it, depending on how much time you've spent with somebody.
Yeah.
Leave that as an option for them. I think is respectful to their feelings, and they may not take you up on it, but at least you've extended that if you've chosen to use a text to tell them.
Yeah. The one thing I've learned, too, is a lot of times how we anticipate someone reacting to what we have to say, sometimes it's not as bad as what I build it up to be in my mind. Meaning when I communicate honestly about something like, hey, I feel like we need to go in different directions. Like sometimes the response to that is much more positive than sometimes we always.
Well, a lot of times they're thinking the same thing.
Yes.
And they're also afraid to have the hard conversation.
Yeah,
and
so
likely if you've gotten to that point, you probably haven't been showing up as a person that they want to be dating as much, right?
Yeah, there's no question about that. Now, in regards to communication throughout the course of a relationship, texting, talking on the phone, obviously the face-to-face when you're with each other, but when you're not with each other and you're going throughout your day, like, what do you prefer? Phone calls, texts, or can you text too much? Like, what type of interaction are you looking for? A balance there, or does it matter?
Yeah, it's interesting. Different relationships have been different. So, and I think it depends on that other person's job. Some people have positions where they just don't really have any downtime.
Yeah.
And so I think there's consideration there. The world that we're living in with text, I think people think, oh, somebody should be getting back to me right away. So if you are a person who is poor at that or doesn't have a job that you could do that, or with your family or whatever, set somebody up to expect that. I think that's the good
hey, during these
roadmap.
Hours, it's going to be hard for me to respond text right away.
I'll try to get back. I'll do my best to get back to you like in a couple hours. But again, a lot of people, if they don't get a response back, depending on the person, they can get really unreasonable. And then all of a sudden they start lashing out, like I'm sure you've heard of people like this. So setting those expectations, I think, is good. But how much is too much? I think it depends on how much you like somebody, right? Because if you're really liking somebody, it's really great to know that they're thinking about you. If it's every hour or they're like, oh, I haven't heard from you. Where are you? It's been 2 hours. And you're just kind of like, well, that gets annoying, right? So you could be turning somebody off by being overly communicative and a little bit showing a little bit too much interest as well.
Yeah, I feel that too. Like even when I send texts, like I think we all want immediate gratification to a certain degree. So if I'm texting someone about setting up something for the show or I'm trying to get something done, like sometimes I'll catch myself saying, well, why haven't I gotten the response yet? And I'm like, wait a second, they could be in the middle of 5 other things right now. So I have to take a step back and realize like my expectations are unreasonable.
But if you're in a text conversation, now this is something different. So we're going back and forth, let's say, and then we're like talking about the show or whatever, and all of a sudden, it's silence.
Yeah.
Well, that's just weird. Wait, we're having a conversation, and now where'd Chad go? Where'd this person go? So saying, hey, I'm going to have to run, or, I'm in the middle of this kid's sports game, so I'm kind of, so you're setting an expectation that you may not be hearing back from me consistently. Then the other person kind of like, okay, it doesn't feel so weird, because you've had that happen too, right? You're like going back and forth, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, hello?
Yeah, you get like the temporary ghosting where it's like you're in the middle of a conversation, and then like a 2-hour lapse, and then you get the response. It's like, wait, what's going on here?
Right.
But that's usually what it is. They're in the middle of something, but they just didn't let you know, like, hey, I'm multitasking 3 different things right now.
Right.
And again, if you let someone know, like, hey, I'm like, for instance, if I'm doing the radio show, I can't pick up the phone and talk to someone. It's like, hey, I'm in the middle of my show. I'll call you when I'm done. Then you let them know right away.
Yeah, it's just being considerate and just putting yourself in their shoes. Like, okay, that would probably be nice to know. Just like with your daughter's situation. I mean, that happens so much. Even like if you went on this date and this person did show up.
Yeah.
To tell you in advance, like, hey, I'm running a little late. I'll probably be there. So maybe you could be doing whatever you're doing before you headed out the door, or you could make a stop at the post office or whatever, so that you're not sitting there waiting. It's just being considerate.
Yeah, and I think that's the key too. Like if you're going to be late, that's the other thing too with technology is like, like maybe traffic's bad or you hit some unexpected traffic or you can't find the parking spot, so you're going to run a few minutes behind. Just send the text as soon as you know, so the other person will know.
Right.
And that's the advantage of the technology that we have, is at least you don't have to leave someone waiting. Now we got the ability to send out a text message and let them know, like, hey, this is what's going on. It's going to take a couple of minutes, but no worries, I'll be there.
Which is the beauty of texting. You remember back when texting was hitting the numbers like 2-3 times for the letters?
Brutal.
Well, I was in Cape Town, South Africa, when we were not texting yet, but they were. And it was really interesting because it was the beginning of 2003. And I stayed there for like 3 months. And so I was living like a local. I had a phone there, and they would just, because it was so expensive to have cellular, they would text. That's all they did. And I was just like, what is this texting? This doesn't, why would you do this? And you'd have to do it with the pad. Everything you typed would have to be hitting the numbers multiple times. But then it was like the light bulb, like, oh, this is so great. Like, I'm running late, rather than making the call, like, I'm running late. You just text 5 minutes or, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then by the time pretty much I got back in late 2003 was when people started texting regularly.
Yeah. It's been a big help. I mean, just like anything with technology, right? There's things that you can use technology for that are terrific, like in those moments where you're stuck in traffic and you got to alert the person that, hey, I'm on my way. I do that stuff in work all the time. I get stuck in traffic, like, hey, I'm not lost. I will be there, but I'm stuck in traffic. We communicate with each other on text all the time. Like if he's running behind or gets stuck in traffic, he'll just shoot me a text. And then right away, I don't have to worry because I know that, okay, he's stuck in traffic, but he's going to be here. Things like that, which are nice. All right, Celeste Trapp's in studio. We have a pair of tickets to give away, 2 pairs of tickets for the Thorns coming up on the 27th, taking on Louisville at Providence Park. If you'd like to catch some Portland Thorns action live in person, 503-248-0620. That's your telephone number. Fire away right now with your phone calls, 503-248-0620. First 2 callers through will get a pair of tickets for the Thorns and Louisville coming up on the 27th, 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. Call now. More with Celeste Trapp when we come back on the Rip City Drive. All right, Celeste Trapp is in studio. Coming up at 5, we're going to kick it over to Fox Sports Radio for Draft Night Live with Jenny Taft, Jay Glazer, Joe Douglas, and LeVar Arrington. That's coming up here in a few minutes. Celeste Trapp is in studio. We're talking about communication. We're talking about how to communicate, the appropriate way to communicate when you're ending a relationship. But, what about in the beginning stages? Even something as simple as, planning the first date, the first time you're going to get together, putting something on the calendar and thinking about what you're going to do so you don't arrive on that day with a couple hours to go and you still have no specific plans in place.
Right. I have too often on the date, let's say it was previous week, let's get together on Friday. Okay, Friday's great. There was no communication, let's say, of specific time on Friday, a place on Friday, but just kind of a general idea of Friday. You would assume evening, right? But then come Friday at 3, I'm like reaching out, or does today still work for you? That shouldn't be happening.
Yeah.
That should already be on the calendar for a specific time and ideally a place. Whether or not you come forward with a great idea, that's awesome. I like when men have ideas and, they're excited about it.
Yeah.
That's great to me. Sometimes it's great for a guy to put out a couple options, and of either locations or types of activities to do.
In your experience with first meeting, do you prefer morning time, like coffee, or like midday, or do you want to do something in the evening with dinner or drinks, or does it matter?
Not really a preference, but I think it's really a pre-screen type situation, right? Like I don't really think of that as a date so much. I think it's because you're meeting in person, like we're talking about. Like it's so different when you're communicating online or in text or whatever than to actually see someone in person, see them without their filters.
Yeah, exactly.
I see
what you're saying. So if you're communicating with someone online, going back and forth, okay, we should meet. Okay, let's do that. So you don't consider that first meeting, whether it's morning, afternoon, or night.
It's kind of a date, but it's more just a pre-screen. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect somebody, and nor would I really want to, somebody like take me to dinner on that first meeting.
Yeah.
Because they haven't really met me to know they want to do that. And then who wants to be stuck in a 2-hour situation if in the first 15 minutes this isn't somebody you want to continue to date? And if it's a man that's going to be treating the woman, do you want to do that with somebody you don't know if you actually want to continue to date?
Well, Celeste, in one of those pre-screening situations you're referring to, like what type of things are you looking to discuss or questions to ask in a pre-screen? Like what are the things you're trying to feel out there?
In person, you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's just the physical chemistry, first of all.
Yeah.
You don't get that from, the pictures and the texting. Just seeing how somebody, handles the situation they're in. Are they a gentleman? I like that. So how somebody treats me when we're in a place, wherever it's a coffee or if it's a restaurant or we're on a walk or whatever. You can get a sense for how somebody shows up in a relationship in his masculine self.
Yeah.
The eye contact. If people are not giving you their full attention, you can see that real quick, and know that might be the type of person they are. They're constantly looking at their phone. Their eyes are gazing. They're watching the screen, the games on the TV, whatever. So that could be something that, might be a turnoff.
I have a couple of friends who are married who have mentioned to me the annoyance they have because their wife, like if they're at dinner together, their wife's always looking at their phone. Like it drives them crazy.
Yeah, it is. And then we do that in our jobs, with our employees, our teams, our coworkers, our kids, our spouses, that we're constantly being pulled to these devices.
Yeah.
And just we know how it feels to be on the other side when you're trying to have a nice conversation. Somebody keeps looking at their phone or looking at the game score or whatever it is. But there could be certain times. It's like a certain big game. You just say, "I'm sorry," or something's happening at work, something.
Yeah, like right now, you and I are having a conversation. But if you and I were both, if one of us was constantly looking down at our phone, the other person would be like, "What? Am I boring you? Is this?"
Yeah, and a good response could be, "Hey, if you need a few minutes to deal with what you're dealing with, I'm happy to. I can use the restroom now or something." You know, so you let the person know, like, I'm noticing that your attention is being taken someplace else.
Yeah.
But yeah, on a pre-screen in-person date, whatever you want to call it, I think it's just getting the sense of who that person is and how they, treat you, how they communicate with you. and how they treat other people around.
Mhm.
I'm aware of that. And then, I like if you meet somebody, I really like if somebody makes it clear that they would like to see me again at that time. So not maybe putting the person on the spot and say, oh, how about, we go do this next Wednesday.
But if you were to say something like, "Hey, I'd really like to see you again," or
Yeah,
that's fine.
that's great. And that person might be like, oh yeah, that would be great. And really they're like, no, not really interested.
But at least
But
you're
at
letting
least
them know your
you're letting them
intention.
know. And then you can follow up with like, oh, did you want to go play pickleball next week? Um, but having that follow up, I think, is what's important because it's dating is like being a marketer or a salesperson, right? You've got to put your best foot forward. You've got to say the things that make you compelling. And you also have to like close the deal, right? Like you don't do a sales call and not have a call of action.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to like, okay, it was really great to meet you. And then, hey, let's, if you're still interested in, checking out that show, it's on Thursday, we could do this and that, so.
So basically, what you're saying is for guys out there, if you have that initial meet, the screening, and then you want to go out on a date or do something else with this person, you've got to take action to close that deal and let it be
Right.
known.
Right. And
And the
if you're
lady's
like,
going to like that, right? And maybe
yeah,
if she wants to spend time with you too, she's going to like the fact that you're taking action to let it be known, like, hey, I really want to do this, or I really want to see you again. And then you follow up to finalize those plans.
yeah, with specifics like, okay, how does this sound? Here's some ideas. Here's the date. Here's the time. If that hasn't all been decided within, appropriate amount of time, she may not have time on her calendar anymore. Like if you start talking vaguely about next week doing something, but then it comes the day before you think like, oh, I'm free tonight. Maybe, she'd
Yeah.
like to do something. You know what? Like she should probably tell you no just because you didn't reserve any time, but maybe she wouldn't. But, it's a knowing definitely on the other side.
All right, Celeste Trapp, Hair M in studio with What Women Want. As always, my friend, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Chad. It's been fun.
All right, coming up next, we're going to kick it over to Fox Sports